Good morning, Crosswinds family. This morning, I hope you had a chance to read Acts chapter 10. This is an important chapter in the book of Acts. It's the story of God bringing the good news of Jesus from the Jewish people to the rest of the world. In fact, this morning, the reason we are saved by Jesus is because of what happened in this chapter. Why did God choose to use Cornelius as the first Gentile to hear the gospel? The Bible tells us there were two things about Cornelius' life that God noticed. They were the reasons God chose Cornelius as the centerpiece of his plan in this chapter. It was Cornelius' almsgiving and his regular prayers that God noticed. The giving of alms is the giving of benevolence to those in need. Cornelius was a generous man. He was generous with his money. He helped those in need, and God took notice of his generosity and chose to work through him for this important part of his plan. Cornelius was not just generous with his money, but he was also generous with his time. He made regular time for prayer in his life. It was in one of those regular prayer times that God sent an angel to speak to him about sending for Peter so he could be the first Gentile to hear the gospel. We should notice that Cornelius wasn't the only one who had a regular time of prayer scheduled into his day in this story. Peter had one too. It was in Peter's time of prayer that God spoke to him in a vision and prepared him to meet Cornelius. It was in regularly scheduled times of prayer that both Peter and Cornelius had in their lives that God spoke to both of these men to bring them together so the good news of Jesus would bridge from the Jewish people to the rest of the world. The thought struck me. In our busy world, do we have a regularly scheduled time of prayer? Do we have regular times of prayer where God can speak to us and direct us towards people that need to hear the gospel? If we don't have a regular time in prayer, what are we missing when God wants to say something to us? I find that when I take time to pray, that's when God usually brings people to mind. People I should call, people I should encourage, and people who need to hear the good news, just like God did for Peter and for Cornelius. If you're like me, the idea of scheduling regular time in prayer into a busy life, well, it sounds impossible. Where will it fit in? Our schedules are already too busy. When I was thinking about that question, I started to think about Cornelius. He was known as a Roman centurion. That means that each day he managed 100 soldiers that reported to him. Yet he fought for and found some regular time in prayer in his life. And God noticed it and rewarded him for it. That is the position I want to put myself in this week. That's the position I want you to be in this week. I want us to be people who fight for and find a regular time of prayer and worship to our God in our lives. I want us to be people that God notices and rewards because of it. So this week, put a time of prayer into your schedule. I mean, literally, put it on your calendar. Maybe it's going to be while you commute to work in the car, keeping the radio off and taking time to talk to God and worship Him. Maybe it's getting up early before the family awakes. Maybe it's going for a walk after work for a few minutes before dinner. Join me in fighting for and finding a regular time in prayer so we put ourselves in a position where God will take notice of our lives and He will choose to use us when He is about the important work of reaching more people with the good news of Jesus, just like He did with Cornelius and Peter.